transition from authoritarian rule does not lead automatically to transition to democracy. And that is, I think, a very important concept that is not well understood.
You can generate the political mobilization to defeat an autocratic regime, but then what follows later doesn't produce a democratic government that can actually govern.
I think we have to concede now that Egypt is slipping into a very deep and sinister new form of authoritarianism. This is the country that, first of all, is the biggest country in the Arab world by far. Second of all, that almost immediately followed Tunisia in the Arab Spring. Third of all, that mobilized most extensively, most courageously, for the most protracted period of time to topple one of the longest-serving Arab dictators, Hosni Mubarak, who had been in power for nearly 30 years. If we read the reports of Human Rights Watch, over 1,000 people have been killed in political violence. I think most of it state-executed or sponsored since the military coup of early July 2013. Thousands of people are in prison now as political prisoners. There has been a comprehensive and, as I said, merciless crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood without any concern for what might be justifiable in terms of actual legitimate criminal charges. And this has extended to quite secular critics in civil society as well.
There's a whole set of institutional design questions that the interim governments and the activists, both, and society face in that moment. And what I was struck by as Egypt was wrestling with those questions is both the leaders, back then it was General Tantawi, as I remember, not surprisingly, he didn't know that literature, right? He didn't know anything about, I don't mean him personally, I mean just the generals. Never a question they had thought about. They weren't trained that way. They didn't take classes here at CDDRL. They didn't know the different pluses and minuses of those. But I was also struck in and I'm just talking about my personal experiences, not generalizing. I was also struck by the people that I met from Egypt that I would see at the White House, that the societal actors had not thought about those questions because they had never, it was an abstraction for them for why would they think about that suddenly? It was upon them to think about those questions.
The first act of desecration of democracy was done by President Morsi himself. That needs to be honestly recognized and confronted, I think, by the Brotherhood and by Egyptian society more broadly. It doesn't mean that it should justify the military coup in Egypt.
States are good at repression. They're good at silencing opponents and jailing journalists and censoring the media, this sort of thing. But they're terrible at providing the most basic services for their citizens, beginning with public safety, but including education, health, and so forth.
I do not think that the military is capable of fashioning any kind of sustainable solution to the country's problems. We know from much experience around the world that the military is not good at governing.
But states have to do more than simply be uncorrupt. They have to have basic capacity, meaning they have to have bureaucrats and civil servants and officials and ministers and so forth that know what they're doing. They have to have a technical ability. They have to be picked on the basis of that technical knowledge and ability, and not just because they're politically well connected.
The general story is, well, things have gone badly now, so everything that happened in 2011, and by the way, the years leading up to 2011, must have been wrong. That's really inaccurate, and that is really short-sighted.